Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and my mission is to use this space to bring content to you to help you understand your struggle with food and break free from binge eating. Now, today's video came off the back of a question that someone asked me in the comments on another video I did. And the question was basically this. It was, if I've got a strong urge to eat, how do I know when this is physical hunger or a restriction-based urge compared to when there's something more emotional that might be going on? So because everybody is so different, I thought the best way to lay this out in a video was to pose 5 questions for you to consider and have a think about to help you figure this out for yourself. This desire to eat can be incredibly complicated, and often it can be a mixture of hunger and emotions as well. So these questions are just designed to try and get you thinking and tease out what might actually be going on for you in any given moment. So question number 1 is, have you been fighting with your hunger recently? Have you been restricting? So if you look back over the last couple of weeks or months, have you been depriving yourself? Have you been over controlling food? Have you been not paying attention to your body's cues? Because hunger doesn't just work on a day-by-day basis. We've got part of our brain that's monitoring how much energy is coming in and out over a longer period of time. It's why you can come out of a period of dieting and then you eat and you're completely full of food, but you still don't feel satisfied. It's not necessarily that it feels like hunger, but it feels like you want to keep eating. But it is a type of hunger. It's like your body is, or your brain is trying to make up for what it perceives to be a deficit. So with this question, you've got to be really honest with yourself. Like, what's been going on in the lead up to now? And that might give you a bit of an indication if this desire, this urge that you're feeling in the moment could be to do with hunger. Question number 2 is, what do I notice in my body? So hunger is often the brain, it's scanning the body and it's trying to interpret what's going on, and it gets the message from somewhere, let's eat. So by checking in with what's going on in your body, like are you feeling tense? Are you feeling anything in your stomach? Are you tired? All of these things are a way of improving your interoceptual awareness, which is that capacity for the brain to interpret what's going on in the body. It's all very well. I often hear this advice, eat what your body wants. But what your body wants has to be interpreted in your mind. That's where it gets complicated, because in your mind you've got all these rules and these thoughts and these anxieties around food. So this is simply asking the question, checking in, what do I notice? This might be quite frustrating at first because it's not going to give you the answers quickly or straight away. But the more you keep checking in with how you feel before and after you eat, you start learning. You start learning how certain things feel. It's hard to say, well, when I feel this exact sensation, that means I need to eat this. Or when I feel this sensation, that means my body wants some of this. It's much more intuitive than that. But when you ask the question and you check in, how is my body feeling? If you're feeling highly anxious, that's going to really interfere with your capacity to know whether you're hungry or not. So when you check in with your body, if there's a lot going on, there's probably a lot of emotions going on if you're experiencing a lot in your body. That doesn't mean you're not hungry too, but it means there might be some emotional stuff as well, and that's worth paying attention to. Question 3 is, was this urge to eat triggered by an event, a thought, or something happening? So this is looking at what was going on with you just before that urge came on. Sometimes it could be really obvious. Maybe you had an argument, maybe you received an email that stressed you out, maybe something you were hoping to happen didn't happen. And so then it kind of manifests just as this desire to eat. When food has become, and eating has become so intertwined and so strongly associated with certain emotions, what tends to happen is instead of feeling the emotion, straight away you feel like you want to eat. So you don't even register the emotion was there. It's like your brain is trying to help you out. It's trying to go straight to the fix because it thinks that food's going to fix the emotion. So even noticing what you were thinking in the lead up to the desire to eat. I see this a lot with people when they weigh themselves, and they'll weigh themselves in the morning. Maybe they liked what they saw, maybe they didn't like what they saw, and somehow just that knowledge and having that emotional response to their weight often manifests in feeling more derailed with food. And so when you're tracing back, what was going on, what was I saying in my mind, what could I have been feeling, or what feeling am I not noticing that could have triggered off this urge? So this is just looking at what was going on beforehand. Are there any pieces that you could put together there that might explain this sudden urge to eat? Question 4 is, how willing am I to pay attention to what I'm eating? So usually if it's an emotional eating experience, what we want is to not feel, to get rid of the emotion, to soothe the emotion away. We don't usually want to pay that much attention to the food, particularly if food is stressful for you. By paying a lot of attention to your food, you can actually increase your levels of stress around it. So there's this desire to switch off, this resistance to really having that, or being present with the experience of eating. Now, I don't mean some kind of perfect mindful eating where you turn off all distractions and you eat slowly. I mean, all that stuff is great when you can do it, but it's actually a really big ask if you're somebody who struggles with food. If you are hungry, however, the eating experience itself is normally more pleasurable. So if you're feeling physically hungry, food tends to taste better, it tends to feel better, and therefore you're more likely to be able to feel or want to feel connected to that experience of eating. You'll be more willing to taste the food, experience the textures, notice what it's like going down. And I think this can be done just as an intention when you sit down to kind of go, I'm going to really try and enjoy this food. So if you were to say to yourself in this moment, you're like, is it emotional, is it hunger? Am I willing to really try and enjoy this food? That tends to be a bit more towards the hunger side of things. Again, like there's no way of making any absolutes here because there's just so many variables. So I'm just doing my best with this. And question number 5 is one that I use a lot for helping people to figure out if they are hungry. And it's simply this: does a wide variety of foods appeal to me right now? Quite often when it's the emotional pull to binge or to go unconscious, there tends to be just certain foods that we want, foods that we associate with binge eating, that we associate with emotional eating. Whereas when you are actually feeling hungry and you have that desire for energy and nourishment, it tends to be that a wide variety of foods are appealing. And I don't mean that idea of, oh, well, if you're not hungry for an apple, you can't be hungry. I don't think it's that specific, but there's just more options. However, this could also be a deprivation triggered thing. If you've been setting yourself these really strict rules and there are all these foods that you're not allowed, it could be that that urge for those foods, whilst not coming from physical hunger, it could be a response to the restriction of those foods, to feeling deprived around those foods. So there's so much to think about here. Our appetites are such complex systems. I mean, I haven't even touched on habit, but an urge can also be a habit in certain situations as well. That's not necessarily triggered by a specific emotion. It's not triggered by hunger or restriction. There's that in there as well. I think ultimately the simplest advice when it comes to trying to figure this stuff out is to be curious, to try to approach it in a playful, experimental way. You know, sometimes you might not be sure. You want this certainty about, am I hungry or not before I eat? And we can't always have that certainty. Sometimes we have to just eat and find out. That's why question number 2 about checking in with your body. You check in with your body, you're still not sure. You then go and you eat. Maybe you realize whether it was or it wasn't. And then you're like, okay, how was I feeling? You start to make those associations through the actual experience of it. There's no amazing words of wisdom that I can give you that's going to help you know any of this stuff for sure. This is a learning and experiential journey. That's how you recover. That's how you find out like what your signs are, what your sensations are, how you can tell the difference between them. So if any of you have got other ways that you use or other tools that you use to try and figure out what's going on when you want to eat, I'd love to hear them. Pop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video. I will see you on the next one.